kōrero in this podcast are of a generalised nature. For specific advice, please talk to your tākuta o tohunga.
It's Kōrero Prescriptions. Because kōrero is healing. He rongo a te kōrero. Nau mai hara mai ki tēnei pakihere roki roki. Kei ngā mātāwaka nau mai haere mai ki Kōrero Prescriptions, the podcast where kōrero is healing, so stay tuned. We are here, Kōrero Prescriptions, made in the mighty Tūrangi e te whānau nau mai haere mai. But what's cool about it is that we bring on tohunga, we bring on mātanga in all of these areas to have a kōrero and wānanga. And then you take what you will from this as your prescription. Nō tātou te waimarie I te piringa mai o tēnei hautipua o te ao hauora. Nō ngā tirangi te ati haunui a paparangi me mu aupoko. She has a PhD. She's pretty clever, this woman. And in her humility, I'll be a kumara for her. She's an award-winning prescribing pharmacist in general practices. She was an associate dean at the School of Pharmacy and Health Sciences at Otago. Amongst other things, she was appointed to our very own Tūwharetoa IMPB by our late ariki Tātumu Te Heuheu. But e te whānau, her biggest claim to fame is that she was brought up right here in the mighty TGI. Anō reira e te tuakana tēnā koe. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, mihi atu ki a koe hoki.
Now we're here to talk about gout, and I had to do a quick search. Ko te ingoa Māori mo tēnei mea, ko te Porohau. I mean, there's a transliteration, Koute, or
Mate
Koute,
Koute hoki.
Mate Koute, Porohau. But can you tell me, in general, what is gout?
Yeah, gout is an inflammatory condition in your joint and elsewhere in your body too. So I think that's the point that people don't often understand is, where you get this terrible mamai somewhere in your tinana, usually. Why?
Do you though? So I know a whole lot of wives like me, we lack sympathy and we think that it's like the man flu, right? But is it sore?
Tremendously sore. Raiha, yeah, immensely sore. They're certainly not putting it on.
Yeah.
I've seen some men, say they've had their bicep ripped off their arm, and the gout's more painful than that. They don't like the air disturbed around them. You can't weight bear. Immensely painful. So you need a little more sympathy. Maybe.
I do. Because I just think when he goes down with gout, I just think, take a pill and it will heal itself, but it doesn't, right? It's not just a one pill solution.
No, and that's a really important point, is that you don't want to be just having a pill to treat the pain because it doesn't go away. The underlying cause is always there, and that's the thing you need to understand and to be able to manage and treat. It's entirely preventable, gout. Nobody should get it.
Preventable. Keyword, preventable. So what does cause it?
Yeah, it's this thing called uric acid that's in our tinana. Every human has uric acid. If animals have uric acid, they die, unfortunately. So we have this substance in our tinana, and we know for Māori and Pacific Island people that we're very good at keeping uric acid inside our tinana. And we think that it was an advantage, mai rā anō. We think that on the voyaging journeys it was really helpful to have a high uric acid level, because uric acid lets you store salt and it lets you store kai. So, mai rā anō, a benefit perhaps, but 2025, less so.
Right. Well, let's talk about that word uric acid. It sounds like urine to me. And now I know that a lot of the cure is in drinking lots of water and then once you get it, and then you actually have to mimi it out.
Ai, Anna. So uric acid for Māori and Pacifica, we have a level that is higher than other populations. So if you think about it, that your level's quite high, it doesn't take much to trigger you into getting that awful pain or that realization that you have gout. But actually the issue is having the high uric acid level to start with. Lots of people say, well, hey, my mate, he can have, a whole crayfish or, kai moana or tomatoes or heiaha, and he's fine, but I'm not, I can only have one tomato and I end up with it. Or people also don't realise that banging or injury, say if you stub your toe or something, you can also end up with gout. I've got a man in Auckland who's got it in his hip, and and there's also this kind of judgmental approach, I believe, around gout, which is kind of why one of the things that I thought that I would solve gout in Aotearoa. This was blooming 3 decades ago. I was working in the renal department, so the kidney dialysis area, the kidney transplant area in Waikato Hospital at the time, and it really was a stark realisation to me of how many of our whānau were in that ward and how many had had a long history of gout. And certainly gout has been part of my own whānau. I've watched my dad and my koro and all my uncles. It was almost like the laughing thing on the pai who could stand, or who could manage today sort of thing.
Yeah. Or if someone was missing from the pai, where are they? Oh, got the gout.
Yes, and ha, you've got the gout, but there's actually nothing funny about it at all. It is associated with earlier death, so mortality, morbidity, as there's nothing good about gout, but it is preventable. And I guess we get caught on that kai concept that it is, you've done it to yourself. Either you're drinking too much waipiro, or, you're eating the wrong thing, or perhaps not exercising enough. Like I say, some of those things can be a trigger. They're not the cause, and that's what we really have to remember. If you're non-Māori, non-Pacifica, your uric acid level is down really low, you'd have to have a huge amount of whatever trigger to tip you into having that awful pain of gout.
It's an amazing taonga whakaheke no ngā tūpuna.
Ai,
Oh my gosh, I didn't realise it's hereditary. Wow.
Yeah.
And so I know this is another misconception that only men get it.
Yeah. Again, it's a misconception. I've got wahine in this rohe who are in their 20s with gout. Usually we see it a little bit later, kind of that menopausal kind of time. Yeah, but no, certainly,
Doesn't discriminate.
Doesn't discriminate at all.
This is mind-blowing stuff. I've also heard that there are a team of, genetic researchers who they want to do a study, and they have data on gout pre-colonial existing in the East Coast. So this is why I'm like, it actually he taonga tuku iho. It's not something we can blame on colonisation.
No. Yeah, there's certainly some elements of colonisation that, feed into that picture, but you do have to hold on to at least 80% of that uric acid level you don't have control over. That is your taonga tuku iho. That is the genetics of it. So, but there are also studies from Te Tauihu, the Waido bar. I'm not sure if you're familiar with those, Raiha, that from the 1300 kind of period, and kōiwi from there that have been very clearly linked that those tupuna did have gout at that time. So, yes, it's not a, modern day realisation.
Wow, that's amazing. So they came here with it our tupuna did.
Yes, and even, you know, the kind of early, late 50s, 1950s, 60s, there was this doctor who went around a lot of the North Island and up through Ruatoria and Tūwharetoa and throughout Te Arawa as well. Not so much here in Tūwharetoa, but he did sampling of uric acid samples. You know, this is well before, you know, McDonald's or whatever. And, you know, then was able to correlate the high uric acid levels that we had from those earlier times too.
Right.
I'm just trying to make the point again about Kai, and, you know, we've got to get out of this and think that, you know, you're the bad brown person doing something wrong all the time.
So then what then, as a prescribing pharmacist, and knowing that the medical system sometimes isn't helpful to us, what would you say is the approach to treatment for our people?
I like where you're going with this, Raiha, because that was really, as I say, my bent nearly 3 decades ago. Like, come on, health system, stop looking at health in this compartmentalized way that you do, you know, this biochemical approach that doesn't consider hauora.
Yeah.
You know, it's very much the health view versus the hauora view, and I always think the Ministry of Health should be called the Ministry of Disease, you know, it's so kind of focused
Disease
like
focused.
that. Yes. So I thought, okay, well, here is a health condition that predominantly affects Māori. Here is a health condition that we can diagnose with 100% certainty, you know, which I don't always have that ability in my, any kind of clinician in their practice. We can't always diagnose with certainty. We've got medicines that can prevent it happening. Here's a really easy one, you know, let's tick this off. Let's make sure that we can do this. Yeah, and I try to get the wider, broader health system to understand that it needs to have that societal view to it, not just the here's a medicine, you know, but how do people access medicines? What's the understanding of that health condition? How do doctors themselves understand it too, because, you know, how often does I know how often because I get told that, you know, repeatedly, you know, a Māori person goes to a health interaction and the first thing they get asked when they have gout is, oh, well, what have you been eating, you know, or what have you been drinking? And there is that stigma associated. So it was trying to use that as a Trojan horse to get the wider health system to look at things more broadly in a whole order and holistic way, as well as our own whānau. And we still haven't ticked gout off, which should have been easy.
Right. Do we have issues with, you know, we have issues with access, but do we have issues with, like, you know, over prescribing a medication because they think it works for everybody, or do we have issues like that?
Oh, absolutely we do, Raiha. I've been going to Pharmac are the people who decide what medicines are funded. So I've been going to them since 2003, asking them for their data, like on who gets what medicines according to ethnicity. And it's been a really interesting journey. They have published a lot of that data now, and some of it became known as what's called the missing millions prescriptions. So we were able to look at Māori versus non-Māori, who's getting what medicines in Aotearoa. And again, if I bring it back to the kind of whole order view versus the health view, there's very much this idea that in the kete of Western mainstream is only medicines, you know, like they're much broader than that. It shouldn't just be medicines. That shouldn't be the default all of the time. Yeah. But what we could tell from that is Māori were particularly underserved in the realm of heart disease, of lung disease, of even antibiotics, which was kind of, you know, the time when we're meant to be more judicious around who gets antibiotics. You know, antibiotics do carry, significant harm and burden to society as well, but also when people need them, they need them.
Yeah.
So, you've got to get that tension just right. But in terms of gout, what we could see very clearly is that Māori were getting the medicines that just treat the symptoms. So go in really quick, write your prescription for the drugs that take away some of the pain, some of that inflammation, that redness. Is that what your partner tells you?
Yes. And he tells me it makes him sleepy.
The medicine to prevent or to treat the pain. Okay, yep, that could be true, depending on which one he gets. But generally, we're given these medicines. And another message I want to put out today: they're not gout medicines. People say, "Bro, you got any gout medicines?" They're not gout medicines. They're pain relievers. They're anti-inflammatories. They're the Voltarens, the naproxens, the brufens, the prednisones. They're all pain relievers. They do absolutely nothing to treating the cause. To be managed on the medicines that are going to prevent takes quite a lot longer in a health interaction. And yes, not being disparaging against my colleagues in primary care, but it does take some time. So you've really got to work through with people that you're going to be, potentially, if you agree, it's always should be a partnership, and people should always ask what medicines they're being prescribed and what are the side effects and what's the aim of treatment, which I don't think, is I try and school people up to be that way, but it's not always the case anyway. But that prevention takes a little longer, and it takes some monitoring. So it's much easier just to flick you a script and say, go home.
And I feel like that's what's happened in this case. There's no actual sort of plan or, there was, I think, some kōrero about fasting.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm like, with my brother, they've given allopurinol. With this case, we've been given a fasting thing. And so it's the gap between all of them. And so what do you listen to? What do you believe now?
Yeah, Raiha, I spent a lot of time too trying to upskill other prescribers, doctors, nurse practitioners as well, and written articles and spoken at conferences. There was one week of some years ago now, I spoke to 300 doctors in the Kaununu-rohe, to try and get them to up their game.
Right.
But the biggest bang for bucks that I've ever had is empowering whānau.
Yeah.
Really working with whānau, and we've had wānanga and they organise it, and I just turn up, and, ask them what they want to know. But tino koi, our whānau really are.
Oh, yeah.
And that's been beautiful. They've managed the subsequent health interactions. So I've taught them about what allopurinol is. That's the medicine to prevent, how it should be prescribed, because historically it's been prescribed incorrectly. It's been prescribed at doses that we know will put people into a gout attack.
Right.
I mean, who wants that? Nobody wants that.
Something that's supposed to prevent it causes it.
Yeah,
right.
So then you're not going to continue taking it, are you? So, there's a whole kind of learning around that. But I had whānau that could work out their kidney function and what dose of medicine they would be prescribed or should be prescribed, and what other medicines they would need to be prescribed against that. And I had such amazing feedback from whānau about that. I've had men that have gone along and said, wow, Leanne, I felt so empowered about that then I asked about my high blood pressure, and they say to me, oh, your blood pressure's fine. And then I say to them, well, what's fine? Tell me what numbers they are, and then I'll decide whether that's fine, and that I think is beautiful.
That is tino rangatiratanga right there.
Anna.
Taking control of your own health. And I guess too, there's a whole lot of, it's fear, I guess, maybe, about asking too many questions and probing doctors. and tohunga. But do you think that we are at a time now where we can be a bit more forward and a bit more probing?
Absolutely. And I really do think these doctors coming through these days are far more open to it than probably historically. The doctor that, of my ilk, probably my age group, you were less likely to ask questions, and there was very much that kind of hierarchical relationship going on where that's the doctor and you don't ask and you're just, meant to do as you're told. But I do think that is changing, and I think we need to make sure our whānau really understand that too, and they should be asking questions. And, I always say that, you're the expert of your own body.
This is true. This is true. What the doctor says isn't not, always gospel. And I mean, mai tō tamarikitanga ki te pakeketanga, you're the one who's looked after yourself.
Aye.
This is cool, man. I love this kōrero. I think we need to have more of it, and this is why we call it Kōrero Prescriptions. So I know you have, done some advocacy work for the place of rongoa within our health system, and you've worked alongside rongoa practitioners. What is the view that rongoa has a place in treating gout?
Oh, I think rongoa has a place everywhere, Raiha. It's been with intent that I have worked in that way formally since 2006. I think it's just such a disservice for Aotearoa as a whole, Māori, non-Māori rānei, and it's just, we really have lost that ability to look broadly. I think it's an absolute loss to all of Aotearoa. And the first rongoa practitioner I ever worked with, no Taranaki ko Mahine Kura Rainsfield, and my goodness, what a blessing. And, I just think that perspective of thinking holistically and thinking about hauora, but in terms of gout, I have put significant effort into it too, because I know our whānau would be far more responsive to thinking of a rongoa way of managing as opposed to a rongoa Pākehā, allopurinol. But there's nothing that I can put my hand on my heart and say this will work. There's people come to me with all sorts of things. I found cherry juice, or I found this and it's going to work. Or I've worked with the Waiho healers, Rita and Mate over that way of looking at how, we might be able to do something that was about prevention as opposed to treatment. And I think that rongoa brings some really good kind of treatment perspectives, when you've got that terrible pain. But that long term, which has been, again, my whole kind of drive, is that gout is associated with heart disease, kidney disease, and diabetes. Where is the inequity currently, or throughout time has been in those spaces? So I really do think rongoa's got, such a place in health in general. It shouldn't be turned to when you're unhealthy, but it should be something that's part of your everyday life. And just been really blessed to work with so many wonderful practitioners.
Did our tupuna have anything, not to treat it, but even to, alleviate some of the symptoms?
Well, look, from what I'm hearing, kind of regionally, that were things like kai atua, mingi, even your kawa with kind of, the general cleansing type approach. Kawa leaves at the time onto joints. Poultices. Yes, poultices. Toot as a poultice. Or a bath. Yes. Tātara more to help you sleep a little better. I have really good success with tātara more. Yeah. Well,
my
I mean,
gosh.
like I say, I never claim to be any any mātauranga in that space.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I say, work with intent with those that do, because, you know, there really is this amazing synergy, and it's just so wonderful.
Wow, and I feel like, you know, Tūwharetoa is on the way there with the marae clinics and having them work side by side with rongoa practitioners, which, you know, is a proven success model. But I think overall this has been so eye-opening, and the whānau would be just so blessed and happy to and eat up all this kōrero, because they've never had it before, or never had access to any of it. So e mihi ana ki a koe. Do you have any last kōrero or last words to our whānau out there who may be suffering from gout?
Please don't feel whakamā about coming to, you know, see someone. As you rightly indicate, Raiha, there are clinics, you know, in the rohe now where hopefully you feel safe to go to and to have that kōrero, and stop sharing the medicines, you know, not tato with the Voltarens and things, you know. Really come and have a kōrero around what is gout, how can it be prevented, what are the long-term consequences of just managing it with those, you know, the medicines that are about the symptoms, not about the prevention. And, you know, just really try and engage. And aroha mai that we've had this kind of view, or people have felt unsafe, or to go and talk, or it's a health condition that should be laughed at, or you've done something wrong. You know, that is not the case. That is not the case at all, and it's not something to be laughed at, and it is something that we do need to take seriously because of this association with, you know, less life, you know, life expectancy, and, you know, greater, poorer outcomes, I guess.
Yeah. Nō reira, Tiwi, you've heard it here first. Sharing is not caring when it comes to your gout medication. But we also need to just run it straight and have these honest and open conversations, because while we laugh about it, actually, and I will admit, my husband is in pain. So more empathy around these things and more understanding. You know, my biggest takeaway from this is that he mea tuku iho no ngā tūpuna, and Māori and Polynesian have a higher predisposition to these things, which I had no idea about. Nō reira, e mihi ana ki te māramatanga kua hora ki wainga i a tātou, mō tēnei o ngā pakihere roki, koira te kupu Māori mo te podcast. I just learnt that too, pakihere roki. Thank you for joining us on Kōrero Prescriptions e te iwi. If you would like more information, tēnā haere ki te tūranga ipurangi o Tūwharetoa on.
Production by Tūwharetoa Mohi. Post-production Raiha Paki. Director Raylene Walker. Production Manager Sierra Tullett. Producer Tūpautanga Paki. Presenter Researcher Raiha Paki. Executive Producer Leanne Puohotaua. Reo and tikanga QA Hinana Media. Production House Tūwharetoa on.
Kia ora whakapiki ora is our opportunity now to put into action the aspirations of our people. Really important because it's helping us to come together as providers for our whānau. So not even that whānau, for our whānau. Kai mai. We're either Tūwharetoa by whakapapa, or we're Tūwharetoa because we live in this rohe. And so when you peel some of those layers back, actually the challenges become opportunities to come together as whanaunga, and opportunities to work better together.
So our purpose in the way is is to support kaumātua to access services.
I hope to see come out of it is that we actually be real, we be honest, and we look at each other as whānau, not as providers and all the dissections that we have.